This session dives into the evolving role of the modern audio engineer.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. How are you all doing? How's the day been? The first day of Palm Expo. It's a wonderful place to be at. Yes, I'm going to start shortly, and maybe I'm going to be walking around for a little bit here. So yeah, I think how many of you were here for the morning sessions? We had some very interesting talks on events and then systems. It's good to be here. I think this is my third or fourth time that I've come to Palm Expo. I think the first time was in 2007 in the other location in there. Yeah. So welcome to this talk, which is titled "Sound Futures: Audio Engineering in India at the Crossroads of Technology, Education, and Innovation." This is going to be a different talk from what we've been hearing so far. It's a topic which we all want to know more of, but we haven't heard much of in the country. It's changing now, and the point is education. It's a fundamental, essential attribute needed, that too in India, which has a rich history of being, academic or scholarly-like. So I chose this topic to emphasize on the thrust of the importance of education, the need for it, and where we are today, where we came from, and exactly where we're going to. So to sort of lay the base of today's talk, it's going to be a focused session on the audio system landscape right now, or the audio ecosystem in the country, and how does education fit in? How was it before, and where are we headed to? So I think for those of you here who have some sort of a formal, education, it's going to be helpful for you to know the numbers. But I think we all understand that a majority of the people who work in the industry are trained informally, although it's changing now, yeah? So let's begin this talk. Before I begin, for you to get to know me a little better, for those of you who don't know me, so I'm Vinay Prabhakar, 20 years of experience in academia, primarily. I come as an educator, a leader, administrator. I've had the great sort of privilege of working in multiple institutions across Southeast Asia, whether it was the International College of Music in Malaysia, which is a partner of Berklee College of Music. I taught there for almost 8 years. I honed my, teaching skills in the place. I've also been part of School of Audio Engineering, both in the Middle East and also in Chennai when they were in there in 2001 onwards. I taught there, for a short while. I came back to India about 10 years ago, and then I moved into management. So I've been, again, fortunate to have managed places like Vijaybhoomi Academy of Music outside Chennai, and also the other Berklee partner in India, which is Global Music Institute, for those of you who have heard of it, outside Delhi. So I've had a very good vantage point of seeing how education in the, I'll call it creative arts or performing arts sector has changed over at least the past 20 years. Okay. Currently, I'm the Dean of the True School of Music. For those of you who are familiar with True School of Music, which was there in Lower Parel, post-COVID, we moved out into the university in Karjat, which is Vijaybhoomi University. We are one school among the other 5 schools in there. So I've trained students in recording for live sound, especially, also for studio. I have a great passion for show production. I love to pull off shows because it comes from that idea that I don't like the buttons rewind or pause or fast forward. In the studio, you have the luxury of stopping a take and taking it again. Live sound, once the house lights are down, it's just play, okay? And there's no stopping. If something stops, something is not, properly set up in there. So I like that adrenaline rush, being in a live sound sort of setting, the thrill of pulling off shows at different scales. Okay, so again, I've had that great privilege of training young students across these countries, and they're out there now doing things in the industry, mostly in live sound or also for recording. Yeah? So that's about me. And what you're going to hear today is more about from my educational experience, both as a lecturer and also now in India as an administrator, okay, which I think gives me a fairly good insight as to how the trajectory in India has changed, both for education, educators, students, as well as what is happening in the industry. I think we are at a very interesting, I'll use the word crossroads right now in India, wherein there's so much happening. We're living in a very exciting century. The 21st century, it's all about immersive audio and immersive experiences. So I'm going to start by putting out this particular image, which is showcasing a crossroads. India, wonderful nation, rich cultural legacy and values. And you can see I've put a thrust on the word education. We always love our technology. We love to see new innovations. We have come a long way as a whole industry. in almost every domains, but this is a very exciting domain, media and entertainment, from which we feed off on different subsets, whether it's live, music, content for other different formats in there. So it's for you to understand that how technology, which is constantly being worked upon, innovated, is moving ahead, but education is now slowly picking up. Okay, we know that education isn't fully established as far as performing arts, production arts, creative arts, and also now sound engineering. There are new places coming up across the whole country, but still quite a long distance from what we would refer to, say, in the West, for example. So to paint the picture of where we are in this current, I call it audio ecosystem, I think these are the different 5 points, or I call them target domains, where currently audio is being, say, utilized or used, okay? We all consume data. Music has also now become data, okay? In the days of cassettes, those of you who grew up on cassettes, it was an experience. Your cassettes, wind them back and play, listen, it would get stuck in there. We had a very short phase of the CD market. It didn't last long. Those of you who love your vinyls, I'm sure you enjoyed them. They say it always makes a comeback, but it's obviously it's a cost factor in there. But now even music has become data. Movies is data. But that is currently, I would say, a thriving ecosystem in the market, which means there is an avenue there for potential audio engineers. This word, independent and DIY boom. Now everybody can be an engineer. Okay, you don't need to really go to a studio to record some instruments. You can do it at home. Okay, I think the biggest one has been the surge in live concerts across the country. We never heard the kind of shows that used to happen in India in the 1980s. Very few. Maybe you had the Police in 1980. Okay, I think when they played at the Rang Bhavan. Maybe you had Deep Purple in 95. Very few, but now we're getting Maroon 5, Bryan Adams, Guns N' Roses, Coldplay. So that's taken a huge leap in terms of live concerts in the country. And the last two, very interesting. We are a nation which consumes a lot of data, and also our podcast viewership is quite high, I think, in the world, top 3 in the world. And of course, gaming and immersive audio, something which we'll be talking throughout the slide. So I want you to keep these 5 different points within the existing, what I call as the audio ecosystem in the country. So big words coming your way: democratization of technology and even the internet. We saw what these 2 things have done. Like I said, everybody, I put it in red to sort of make you wonder, who is this everybody, anybody, what qualifies them to be a composer? But it's happening, folks. I have students as young as 12, 14 who know how to use Logic. And when you ask them, how did you learn? We went to YouTube. Didn't have to go to a school to learn. So it's, in a way, it's good. The world has enough people around the entire planet, some 9 billion people or whatever it's going to be. Everybody can take part in the creative process. Okay, anybody, 25 years ago, if you want to record, is this mic stable, guys, the sound team? Hello, sound engineers, is this okay? Is the battery problem? Or I'm hearing dropouts when I'm talking. Yeah, so 25 years ago, if you wanted to record music, your only idea was that you have to go into a studio. You have to book studio space. It means time. You have to get a team in there. Today, you don't need that. Once the internet began to grow across the country, India, anybody who could download any software in any format, you could make music at home. And today, in fact, it's at a very, very high level in there. But what has happened is anybody can now take a shot at being an engineer, okay, a mixing engineer, because it's all happening in the box. You don't need to go to a full studio in there. Okay, now, there are people who will argue with that and say, no, that's not the best way to really play with sound. Some would say, no, it has opened up an entire avenue for youngsters to actually make music at home. Now, leave that to you as to how do you want to frame an opinion about that. But the point I'm making is that we're living in a world where whatever comes from the West is quickly made open to everybody. ChatGPT, now anybody can access it, and now they can get better in their work output. Okay, there are different debates about the ethics involved and the quality of work, but the base point is that we have come to a point where technology, which has opened up ways of making music, has impacted people, youngsters. Low barriers to entry. You don't need to be qualified to make music now, okay? Independent artists. Most of these artists in India in the last 20 years, they made it on their own. They didn't have the backing of a label. They didn't go to a school to study how to make music. A few videos, friends help here and there, some ideas, and they get their EPs out or singles out. There is a boom now, which is, I think, constantly happening, self-taught engineers. I'll come to in a few slides. remote working, collaboration, and freelancing. And of course, there's a boost also in innovation. And finally, there's a shift in the learning and career path. So I think what I'm putting on the slide has actually been helpful. The opening up of technology and the access to it has made many more young people, given a chance to make music and also make it out there and be successful and actually make money off it. And now with the onslaught of AI, we know where that is taking us to a whole different level. I think me, again, as an observer in the past 25 years of what has happened in India, I think there have been some remarkable shifts in the quality of sound engineering in the work we do, whether it's live concerts or even working on OTT, the sound design for it. I think key things are advancements in technology has certainly helped us improve the quality of the work we do, whether it is recording, mixing, or mastering. There's also been a mindset shift. What has happened is wherever I network, I see people now understand that there is a role of an engineer. Okay, before it was never out there prominent. It is increasing. It's not there out completely yet. But when there is a recognition of the work of an engineer behind the scenes, whether it is even a supervisor or a mixing engineer, that impacts the quality of work coming out from those engineers. Awareness, I think what we're seeing now is we have a lot of audiences who are informed. When they pay for these concerts, they expect a very good experience, both from the visuals, the graphics, the sound. I think that too helps because then there is pressure on these companies or engineers to give out the best sound in there. So I think awareness also has played a big role. I mean, 25 years ago when I was playing in my band Hyderabad, we came from the days of point source speaker systems. Messy, muddy, just a wash of sound in all those IIT festivals, Today it's nothing but your line arrays, and there's a whole different response of sound in there. So the youngsters, the audiences know what they want from their media, whether it's an EP, whether it's an OTT release, they're expecting a very high standard of audio. Having said that, there are also the average listeners in the country, example, laborers or anybody, they don't care about the quality of sound. As long as they're hearing their favorite star, they're happy. Okay, but then there is also a growing segment in the population wherein when they invest in high-end gear, they also expect to get some good sound, which means it's taking the work of engineers to improve the quality of work they put out there, whether it's OTT, film, or music. And finally, education. That plays a very big role because past 20 years, I myself have seen an increase in the number of institutes in India, which are offering courses mostly in performance, production, and also now what is happening is people have seen that there is a need for audio engineering at a professional level, not at a home level in there. So education also has impacted the quality of the audio output in different domains in the country. A few stats, which I'm sure you already know. We're a large nation, 1.45 billion people. Half of them have access to active smartphones, which is a very, very powerful number. Everybody almost is plugged into the internet. We wake up, we are bombarded with sounds, your ringtones on the way, music in your pods. These are huge numbers, but yet the market for engineering is at a very, very small scale. When I'm talking about market, it's about the education market or even engineers who can give their talent out there. That's a nice statistic to see that 200,000 hours of work is coming out through OTT, film songs. This is in a year. Okay, that's almost, they say about, I think, 8,000 days in some number, I think, in that way. 20,000 songs are created. I'm talking about original songs every year. So across the nation, okay, these are just rough numbers, these are not exact numbers. It says that there is a growing market for creators and also consumers, okay, and they want to get the best audio at the highest standard. And the last statistic is interesting because 10.5 paid subscribers on different platforms, Spotify or Geo or whatever. That's an increase of almost 7 million from last year. So which means from the days, for those of you who are aware of cassette piracy in the 1980s, okay, when more than half the market was just thriving in piracy, today we have people paying. Of course, it's a small number when you compare it to our population who have active smartphones, but still, it's a healthy sort of a point to keep in mind. Yeah? I think this is the first thing to give acknowledgement to, which is the live entertainment boom. Okay, post-pandemic, there's been a surge in the number of concerts people want to go, number of visiting bands from the world who come by and stop and they perform. They say that just in last year, we had almost 80 concert days in the whole year. We're talking about large audiences in there. Why this is happening? I think we know what's happening with the economy. There are people who can now afford to go for these concerts. They really want to be immersed in a very sort of a captivating, enthralling experience. We have seen these visiting bands. We've seen Coldplay, Brian Adams. Okay, they've come to the country. That opens up a nice avenue for these local sound rental firms to send their crew, wherein you have them working with the visiting tech team. It's a great learning point to learn from what they do in the West in terms of system designing or integration or whatever. So this is I think, definitely a booming place to be at in the country, if you're talking about audio and its impact in the industry, wherein there are people who are needed. When I say people, I'm also looking at qualified people. Just a side note on the media and entertainment sector in the country. These are huge numbers. It's also contributing to the country's GDP. I'm talking about digital media, whether it's OTT music, films on different platforms, or just watching films, in a theater. Again, why? Because there is a rampant use of mobile active smartphones, internet connections. All of us are hooked all the time. We are consuming data endlessly. Okay, we have become more of consumers than creators. And then again, for the numbers of people we have in the country, I think there's a little sort of a gross sort of a difference in there. Yeah? I just got this interesting graph which shows how many people currently are employed in the media and entertainment sector. 2.8 million jobs across all these different domains, whether it's television, into live entertainment, and down below is sound and music. But also what's interesting is that 10 million informal jobs also exist. It can be simple things like technicians or roadies who are supporting those main roles in there. I would love for these numbers to grow in a very formal setting. And of course, we're hoping that as we emphasize on the need for education, these numbers will certainly increase in time. Yeah? We have to give acknowledgement to even the OTT shows. That's a huge number. 550 plus million OTT users just in last year. Okay? Leading platforms in the world where people are taking 4 or 5 connections every month. A lot of money in there. But what is happening is everybody's enjoying that immersive experience when they watch their favorite show. I mean, there are some amazing OTT releases which there's so much of detail happening in the soundscape. And people want more for that. And they're glued to it, whether on an aeroplane or at home. But again, what happens is the more of these coming in the market, there is now a surge in demand for mixing for different formats, whether surround or Dolby Atmos. Also multilingual dubbing, although I think recently there's been AI coming in the picture, wherein AI is doing the work of now dubbing in multiple languages instead of having an engineer for that. And also more importantly, optimizing audio standards for a global audience, because we do know that our shows released in India are also being watched by people across the world, which means there is this added sort of a pressure on the work that is being done in India in terms of optimizing the audio standards for global viewing. There's also definitely been a very impactful rise of independent musicians from India who have taken this music across the world. We just saw what happened with Hanu Mankind in Coachella, okay? Arijit Singh, who's taking the music, he's also taking India. When he goes and performs in his soft ballads, he's representing India out there. That's for us a wonderful achievement, in terms of, one, we already had Bollywood taking the entire front stage for the past 70, 80 years. And now we have independent artists who, of course, now have the backing of labels. But this has also opened up the need for, project-based producers, recording engineers, people who understand how to make these stars who maybe initially when they started off didn't want to invest into a full-fledged album or a recording. Finally, game audio. India is a huge market for game. There are huge numbers in there. They're saying it's about 60 billion in the next 10 years' time. But of course, there's always a skill shortage. And it's also, audio is given the second or afterthought. But now it's changing. With better games coming into motion, there is a need for engineers, who can work with the middleware, for example. So that's something which we need to look out to, and that's a gap for us to plug. All of us as educators, who know that there is a need for trained, qualified, professional engineers who understand the formats they're working with. So what you just saw, wherein I said the base is, it's not just volume that we should be, saying, wow. It's also growth across multiple formats. The market has now become diversified. From the days of just having cassettes or vinyls or CDs, you have different formats. So I think there is enough for everybody in the market out there. When I say market, students, young aspirants, technicians, wherein they can see where they want to go. Okay? Of course, we know India, the engineering work in India came from people doing multiple work. You would have an engineer who is working on films, who's also working on an album, who's also doing work for OTT. It's not so clearly set as in the West, wherein you have a role only for a studio mixing engineer. Okay, so that's how the country works. But even in this particular functioning of our country, we need to stress on the importance of having qualified engineers here. So that led me to the question of what does it mean to be an audio engineer right now in the country? Is there a future? Is there a hope? Okay, and I'm talking about professional audio engineers, not those ones coming from their home-based studios, yeah? It's open, like I said. You got different domains they can target, whether it's film, OTT, gaming, live events, you can do them all. There's also been now many people who work in the studio, and they're also mixing live for their artists. It's a big difference working in a studio where you have the safety of a stop and a playback and a rewind, as opposed to going into a different venue night after night. But it's opening up. What has happened is, because, like I said, multitasking, that engineer cannot focus only on, say, making music, okay? Because he has to also meet the client's need for a particular OTT release, at the same time working on another project for a big movie in there. Tools have been made accessible, but limited training across the country. So you might have some wonderful software coming in the country, but people who know how to use it in the right sense of it is a smaller number, and hence there is a need there to plug the gap of bringing more institutions which actually offer good focused training. Yeah. And of course, this new buzzword AI, I, or you, or me, it will be there. We have to deal with it. We have to embrace it. But key things are immersive sound. So engineers in India, that's for you an important sort of a point to keep in mind, that you are shaping the sonic image of India when you do your work, whether in a home studio or whether in a big studio. Yeah? So if you were to look at the domains for what audio engineers can look out, is you have the mainstream, which is, of course, always dominated by film, TV, and OTT, which is now growing. Music production in India didn't have the same equivalent of what would happen, say, or what happened in America for 70 years. I mean, there you have something called the art of making an album. India didn't have that. Even the best bands in India, if you take even Indus Creed, even the very popular band before Indus Creed, I think Waterfront in Bombay, they hardly recorded albums. They just played live. So there was never a culture of actually taking a full band, even Parikrama. They were known for their cover songs. They hardly recorded. So I think we lost out on a very interesting phase of the art of record engineering, spending time with an instrument in a studio, miking it up. There's a joy in it. Okay, you have youngsters today who just say, we use FL Studio and we make a full album. But they don't know what is the importance of using a Sennheiser microphone at a distance to the snare or the kick drum. So I think I would really love to see a resurgence of the art of recording in a studio. Of course, we saw what happened in the world with the rise of technology. There's been a decrease in studios. Even in India, besides just the big film studios, there are hardly places. I think there are about 10, 15 across the country which are good. Some in Delhi and most in Bombay or Pune. But I think if you really want to improve the quality of sound engineering, of course, there is a current avenue, live sound, but I'm talking about recorded sound. When you spend time with the artist, you're working on albums for days on in there. Live events is a great place to be in now if you like the adrenaline rush of being in that sort of moment, dealing with problems in there. And of course, theater, performing arts is increasing. I think Bombay alone has 16 venues wherein you have installed sound. And there will definitely be a need there for qualified engineers or personnel. These down below are emerging technologies, which I've been talking about, game, audio, interactive media, for which also there'll be a need. So where can we position the audio engineers who are coming down up the ladder behind us? I've taken out these 4 domains. One is live and sound, definitely. Hence, you don't see any example of working in the studio. Spatial immersive audio is growing with Dolby Atmos, that whole experience. Podcasts is a huge market, and of course, game, audio, and interactive. So when I'm talking about live sound, there is a need for skilled engineers, whether it's system, whether it's even your techies. They know what does it mean to be on stage, understand patching, whether it's working with Dante-based systems in there or whether it's working with simple analog cabling in there. We need people across the entire domain who understand rigging, who understand phase. Okay, there are all these engineers who think that by watching a YouTube video, they know everything about phase. No. You have to be in that moment to understand, to hear exactly phase with your own ears in there. Yeah? Spatial immersive audio, like I said, OTT platforms are now embracing Dolby Atmos. Why? Because they know the consumer is waiting for the next best experience in their OTT setup in there. Podcast, game audio, I think these 2 domains will certainly grow. I'm thinking more from the home producer end, because it's gear you can afford at home and you can easily work with. But the moment they enter the professional domain, you will certainly see a need for qualified engineers. Yeah. So what are the challenges that we are facing with this current audio ecosystem? informal learning versus structured learning. There's a huge gap in there. Although I represent one institution, it's only taking care of a small market. There is a huge market in India. I'm sure tier 2, tier 3 cities in India, there are youngsters who really want to work with sound. But of course, they could be having the parents saying, kya karega with your sound degree. Can it be something meaningful in there? So I think we have to address that informal learning versus a structured skill development. Infrastructure gaps do exist, whether you take places like Jamshedpur or those tier 2, tier 3 states or cities. They might have access to online tools. When it comes to recording output gear, for example, it's limitedness. So besides the metro cities, you hardly have gear in there. So there is a demand for post houses, which means engineers in there, OTT, immersive content. So that gives us the opportunity of skilling a new generation of audio engineers for multiple domains, which will lead to my point about education, how can we work on it. Just a little slide on AI. I won't talk much about it because we know what it is doing in this world. People saw it as a threat. I don't think it's a threat. It's a tool to work with. It has given us more time to be creative. It's got ample choice, but it's how you can control your own choice sort of issue in there. It speeds up workflows, it gives you more time to be creative, and it's made, say, production quite open for everybody, accessibility. So I know there are people who don't like AI creeping into our lives, but it's the same thing anybody would have argued when you came from analog mixing to automation in the 90s, or the people who cribbed about changing from tape onto DAWs in the 1990s. Today, almost everybody records onto DAWs. Very few people, the high-end purists, they go and buy those old 2-inch tapes and they record on them, which costs a lot of money and then maintenance. So I think in the same way that people countered automation, same thing is happening now. But of course, AI is way more powerful than automation as an example. But I think we need to, all of us here, stakeholders, understand that AI is here to stay and we have to work with it. Yeah. I found an interesting statistic in a report by the Council for Research on International Economic Relations. They did a sample of audio engineers and their training. It's a very disappointing statistic. Just 10% of the people sampled had been trained formally, whether they went to a school. If you take even people like KJ Singh, for example, they went somewhere, or even Fali Damania, they went studied in Canada and came back. You didn't have them being trained in India. 27% trained on the job. That's a very common thing in India. You learn on the job. I learned on the job because there was no place to really do sound. When I was playing in my bands, I struggled with the monitor mix on stage, always feeding back. So I wanted to have that issue tackled. I went and took a course, and I was happy doing, for a long time, monitor mix engineering, which is still now a growing thing in India. It never even existed in India, monitor mixes, all right? And the largest chunk, 63%, are informally taught, which is quite disappointing. My goal would be to flip this. I would love to see 65% of the people trained formally by mentors, educators, and I think we can do it if we all work on a plan. Yeah? I just made this chart for a very interesting reference for all of us to know that if you take a sort of a survey, you'll find that the engineers who are informally trained are high, YouTube trained higher, and of course AI assisted. You'll have youngsters in this gap, in this group from 14 till even 35, 40, who are saying that, no, thank you, I don't want to go to a school, I'm happy with a YouTube video, and I'll do it on my own way. Now, there are dangers of coming from YouTube University, because at some point you have to relearn or undo whatever you learn when you say, oh, that's wrong. It's happened to many of us. But I think we, again, as stakeholders in education or other industry domains, we need to ensure that, yes, you can work with YouTube videos, but it's also important to be mentored by somebody who knows what he or she is talking about, the particular domain here. So I think we have a goal here. We have to flip that. Okay, we need to ensure that we're getting more engineers to meet the demands of the industry who are coming in trained, who know what it is to work with different formats, how to optimize audio, how to quickly work on a mix, even if you have the best AI tool. I did a little reference, a research on, of course, nothing to do about West and East. It's just a reference because we know that the systems in the West, whether it's education or any other field, it's a little more structured. So if you look at the industry, of course, in the West, I'm talking about Americas or Europe, it's highly professional, it's well segmented. Whereas in India, it's getting better, it's evolving slowly. I'm not going to diss it at all. Education is very structured there and formal. Universities, they have the backing of their government bodies. In India, it's growing, but it's still very informal. Okay, and that's one of our goals. We have to formalize education in the country. And of course, equipment is high-end there, more widespread, as opposed to limited in India besides tier 1 cities. Recognition, their engineers are seen as members of the band. If anybody of you follow the work of Metallica, they've had the same engineer for 40 years, Big Mick Hughes. He's never not mixed any of their concerts. He becomes an important part of the band. And if you follow his work, he's come from analog consoles to now those integrated boards in there. So I think we also have work in here to convert that into this chart, wherein we can say in the next 5 years that India has come a long way in terms of education. So now to come to the last part of my presentation about the role of formal education, I think you cannot do away with foundational knowledge. It is very, very important in any domain. So even if you have YouTube universities or WhatsApp universities or AI tools, you need to have a teacher who knows what he or she is saying, and you have to have it paralleled with practical application or skills in there. Hence, curriculum plays an important role. You cannot do away with theory. Science of sound, understand different spaces, signal flow, ear training, and we also need to ensure engineers are appreciating more genres besides what they only listen to. That's an important goal for all of us as educators in there. I think what is going to work out is not necessarily being trained in a master's program, but even a certification. This morning I was at the stall and I'm seeing so many requests for people who are already working in the industry, but they want to be skilled. We also heard this morning in the events talk about upskilling. So there is a huge demand, and the engineers know that they want to be certified, but they're not finding those places in the country wherein you get the best, say, mentors in there. So certifications, internships is very important, along with exposure, global or even a local level, which can be the new standard. We also have MESC, which is a powerful government-based organization, which is trying its best to create these qualification packs to focus more on vocational roles. So I think two things to keep in mind is we have to still go back to curriculum, which is creating students who are ready for the industry, and also having their careers future-proofed. We do all the time wherever I'm working in there. Because the students and even the parents have to be first convinced, will they have a viable future in the industry in India as an audio engineer? It's a big question mark, because parents know that if you want to be a mixed engineer in the country, how will you survive if you have a family to feed? But there again, you have a question of the student's passion. That person knows that I love working with sound. I want to shape that mix. But then they're not thinking through about the career. Will it be a sustainable career in there? So I think we can do that when we get better in the curriculum design, where we are working, to ensure that the curriculum is vetted by industry experts in there. And more importantly, I think the time has come now that a one-size package will not work for everybody in there. We will have to ensure we're creating new tracks, okay, which enables students to say, I only want to go into live sound. I only want to go into immersive audio after finishing 2 years of the foundational knowledge in there. Yeah. So I think what is key is role-specific development from the end of academia, wherein schools come and discuss this with the industry needs, bring in mentors and see where can we create a very different special track within the programs, whether at a certificate level, diploma, or a degree level. Only then will we see much more value placed in education in audio engineering in India. Nothing can do away with mentorship, which is one of my focus points of this talk. Mentors, to me, is somebody who understands the value of personalized guidance. You're there with the person. You take care of their learning journey. You're not just giving them knowledge. You want them to understand it from their experience, give them pointers and tips. I think that will never go away, even if you have the best ChatGPT version in the world. You need somebody who has done the work and who can tell you how to fix things in that particular moment. Yeah? So I think providing hands-on experience is very important for live events, which I think is a great platform to actually get hands-on experience in there. Offering expert mentorship, like I said, is an important asset for any school or institution which offers education. This is something which is changing in India. We have even Palm Soundlight Awards, wherein they're recognizing engineers for the work they do. It's getting also better with IRA. Even I think Mirchi Awards or IFA, they start to recognize. I mean, for us, it took someone like a Resul Pukuti or a P.A. Deepak to say, oh, there's something called working on sound design or, mixing. Until those names came out, because of an Oscar, people never bothered about what work is happening behind the scenes, which is fine, because we all know in the world of audio production, it's always taking a second seat. We're not there to glorify the engineer. But having said that, for all of us within the domain of sound, we know that these are very important roles, the work you do, because you're giving people a wonderful experience in there. So I think As long as the engineers are given their visibility, their credit on their releases, you have clear rights defined, and also more importantly, giving them recognition for the work they've been doing as engineers. Yeah, this is an interesting point. I found an interesting person, Meena Narayan, who say that she was one of the earliest engineers in India who recorded Hindustani music in the 1940s or 50s, I believe. But we don't have many women. There could be young girls in their home sitting saying that we also want to be part of a mixing experience. But then again, you will have for them limitations, which I think we should change. So groups that are underrepresented and even young girls, it is up to us as to how we open up the market. Because it should not be only a male-driven industry. Where I taught in ICOM Malaysia, we always had a good balance of girls and boys in classes who have taken live sound. And the girls that I taught today are working in Australia or Hong Kong. So I think until we all talk about this and we do things like offering girls scholarships and talking about roles like working in studios or OTT releases or sound designing, okay, it shouldn't only be that only men are driving the industry, because we got to give everybody a fair chance in the world. So I think it's also creating inclusive, safe, and healthy workplaces in every sense of the word and experience. So I think we need to have qualified, experienced educators. There's so much of work done in India in the 80s, 90s. People like Satish Gupta or even Vijay Benegal. But their work is not documented. I think besides Sudeep Audio on YouTube, there's hardly a place to go and hear about how people worked in a studio. Okay, so if you can get youngsters to also start researching, archiving, documenting the work done by these legendary people, folks, who worked in very different conditions. But if we encourage our students saying that, no, before us, behind us, the engineers worked in even more tough conditions, but they still made it through. So I think we need to have teachers who also encourage on researching. Let's get some books out. Let's begin with articles to document the work done in Bollywood and also the work that is happening now with the OTT world in there. Yeah? But because academia pays low and is not seen as a valuable role, people go in the industry. Even the industry doesn't pay you that high if you want to be a techie or an engineer, unless you are at a very high level in there. So these are goals for us to change. And I think we all should work together and try to address this, because if we don't, like I began talking about, India has a rich cultural history in terms of our folk instruments. I don't think youngsters even know how do we record a ghatam, versus a dhol or a drum in India, which is a folk-based thing. So I think even instead of getting excited with tools in the AI world, we as educators should also encourage kids to start recording instruments in India and archive the rich legacy of Hindustani, Carnatic, and also folk and tribal music. If we don't bring this into our curriculum, it will always be sidelined. So I think if you really want to outdo Bollywood, there is a nice marker in there. Capturing India's folk music, tribal music, wherein we can put this in our curriculum that they have to go and record a particular tribal group in some part of India. Only then we can now tell the world that this is India's unique sound. Yeah? Collaboration with industry is always needed. We have the IMI. AES in India is also a growing chapter in there. So we all have to come and work together, all the relevant stakeholders. Okay, industry, academia, organizations, wherein we can create a plan. We can work on the curriculum, which is going to be future-proof. It's meaningful, it's practical, it's also giving a good balance of theory in there. So I think audio is no longer just behind-the-scenes role. It is shaping people's experiences. Okay, the moment we hit play on our systems, we're enjoying the entire experience, whether it's OTT or whether it's music in there. So these different domains is where sound, audio can be used to shape people's lives, whether it's health, retail, or therapy of any sort, advertising, branding, using sound to have a brand recall value in there. I think these are wonderful domains to emphasize on where you can create value as an audio engineer in the remaining decades of this century. Yeah? So to sum it up, we're not just creating content. What is happening is currently we are shaping the sound of India to ourselves and also to the world. 25% of the Indian-based OTT shows, they have an international viewership. That's a good number, which means the people who are working on the OTTs know that they have to optimize their audio work at a very different standard. So somebody sitting in New York is going to say, that's an amazing experience. I mean, there are some good examples of, I think, Delhi Crime or Scam 92, amazing detailed soundscapes. You're just immersed and you're hooked in that. So maybe that could be the equivalent of what I was stressing on, the lack of record making in India. Maybe it's about OTT. Like the way Bollywood film music ran the industry of audio recording mixing, maybe it's now the phase of OTT, wherein we can also still find that avenue to ensure that the engineers who are working on OTT releases understand the needs of the global viewership and then align their learning in the right way and then add that to the work they do. Okay? So to wrap it up, I'm a big fan of mentorship. Okay? I think teaching is now phased out. Okay? Teaching is boring. Okay? We know we come from India, which is rote learning. Okay? Mentorship is much more deeper. It's deeper teaching. It's personalized teaching. It's talking about values. It's being hard with them. You know, it's giving them a nice face to understand before they leave the institution that you will find tough days. And now, even with AI, you still have the old school engineers who are saying, no, let AI be AI. We will be ourselves because we know what we want from the sound we're working on. So I think education will give you the technical skills and theory, but mentorship will bridge that gap which is there between the classroom, that personal experience, and what's out there in the real world. I think those of us who really enjoy live sound, I think this is the best time to be part of it in India. The number of concerts, the number of sound companies in India which provide support, tech, or gear, I think it's a tremendous learning opportunity for those who love the energy rush, that you can really work on setting good standards of giving audiences who are paying good money a wonderful and memorable experience, because only when we have the industry coming into the classroom, it's going to transform the way our engineers will actually go out there in the industry. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to share about education. So thank you. If anybody has any questions or comments or opinions, please let me know. Yeah. Thank you all.